Okay, my top 10 of 2019, and it's already a tie between Pain and Glory and The Farewell. These two films share a lot of similarities. Both deal with illness, grief, family, and both are at least somewhat based on the actual experiences of their writer-directors. Pain and Glory was written and directed by Pedro Almodovar and is about an aging filmmaker who's simultaneously dealing with chronic pain and a lack of motivation to create. I really loved Antonio Banderas in this, and I'm so happy for him getting the nomination for it. He's playing this guy that's just at his lowest point, both physically and emotionally, and he's at this crossroads where he can either lean into giving up and isolating himself, or find what made him passionate about his work in the first place so he can move forward. Penelope Cruz is great in this as well as the main character's mother in the flashback portions of the film. Considering that both actors have a long history of great work with this director, Banderas playing a fictional representation of him along with Cruz playing the character's mother is incredibly fitting. As emotionally heavy as some of the character interactions are in this film, they never felt forced or insincere, and the direction the main character ends up taking by the end of the film felt very earned. This is such a beautifully romantic film, and having been a fan of Almodovar for a while now, it just makes me so happy to see him continuing to put out great work like this. The Farewell was written and directed by Lulu Huang and is the fictional retelling of her own personal experience with having to keep her grandmother's cancer diagnosis from her at the request of her family. In this film, upon hearing the news that the grandmother does not have long to live, the family decides to stage a fake wedding so that she doesn't get suspicious as to why everyone is visiting China at the same time. The main character, Billy, has been raised in America and is not okay with the way the family's going about lying in this way, but has to do her best to go along with it in spite of the cultural differences of opinion. This is a very well-written film, and in spite of having such a large cast, you really get a sense of who each character is over the course of the story, even the ones who don't have very many lines. Awkwafina's performance is great as Billy, and I love the actress who played Nai, and I don't want to mispronounce her name, so I'll just put it here. Lulu Wang did such a great job with this, and she's definitely a filmmaker whose work I'll be looking out for in the future. Number 9, Midsomer. Ari Aster has only made 2 feature-length films so far, and he's already established himself as this love it or hate it kind of filmmaker, and so far, I gotta say, I'm loving it. His specific brand of weird shit suits me just fine. Midsomer is a beautiful looking film with great performances, and if you have a problem with me including it in my top 10 because you didn't like Florence Pugh's frowny face, die mad. Moving on. Number 8, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. What can I say? Tarantino just keeps putting out bangers. This love letter to 1960s Hollywood was just so much fun, and aside from the third act, it's definitely the most chill movie he's ever made. It's paced really well, it's hilarious, Brad's great, Leo's great, Tarantino seems very aware that he's great.
And you don't share the script with somebody else, you write it by yourself? Kind of don't really have anybody to thank. I did it.
God. Anyway, I like this movie. Moving on. Number 7, The Irishman. So, being the Scorsese fan that I am, I suspected that I would enjoy this film, but I had no idea just how emotionally sucked into it I would be. I sincerely don't feel like any of its 3.5-hour runtime was wasted, and that's no easy feat. Most of the time, films that are that long can do with a little snip here and there, but I honestly can't think of any scenes that I felt dragged or didn't belong in this. In terms of Scorsese's crime films, this feels like the most emotionally subtle of all of them, and it just works so well. All of the performances are great. Joe Pesci absolutely blew me away with how appropriately understated his performance is in this. Everyone felt like a real person, which is good since they're playing real people. De Niro made me cry more than once over the course of this film, and you can just tell everyone put their heart and soul into making this thing. And yeah, this movie really got to me and is now one of my favorite Scorsese movies, so there you go. Number 6, Marriage Story. Speaking of things that made me cry this year, boy oh boy did Noah Baumbach absolutely rip my heart out of my chest. It has some of the best acting I've seen all year. Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson are both at their absolute best in this. At no point does anything this film is trying to portray feel insincere, and I really appreciate how much detail is put into portraying what the process of divorce is actually like, and how ugly it can get even if both parties are decent human beings. And that's what this film is really about. These characters are both good people in a miserable situation, and it just brings out the worst in both of them. This had one of my favorite musical scores of the year too. Randy Newman did such a great job with the music in this. This movie is so good that I feel bad for the next breakup film that comes out because the level of detail in this sets the bar for that incredibly high. I cannot recommend Marriage Story enough. Please watch it if you haven't already. It's great. Number 5, The Nightingale. So, I'm a huge fan of The Babadook and have been waiting for Jennifer Kent to make another movie for like 5 years now, and it was worth the wait because The Nightingale is just outstanding. It's a revenge film that takes place in the early 1800s in Tasmania, and trust me when I say this is no easy watch. If any film can be called unflinching, it is this one. The horrific acts of violence that happen throughout the film, especially the incident that sets off the whole revenge plot, are going to be incredibly hard to take for a lot of people, so if you haven't seen this yet, just know that going in. This is a very honest look at Australia's dark history of colonialism and does not shy away from any aspect of how horrifying this time period was. The development of the relationship between the two main characters was so believable, and nothing between them ever felt forced or as if they were reaching for something that wasn't there. The story itself goes in a direction that feels very earned and is far more layered than your average revenge film. Out of all the films I saw in 2019, I definitely cried the most at this one, and I continue to look forward to what Jennifer Kent does in the future. Number 4, One Cut of the Dead. I love this movie. Words cannot express how much joy this film brought me. This is by far the most heartwarming film I have seen all year, and I cannot tell you why because you're just gonna have to experience this roller coaster ride for yourself. The story begins with a zombie film going terribly wrong, but I promise you there is so much more to it than that. The creative turn that this film takes about halfway through is just so satisfying, creative, and funny, and just when you thought the zombie genre was played out completely, this film comes along with an idea that actually feels fresh. Please watch it. It's so wonderful, I promise. Number 3, Climax. So Climax was finally released in the US in March of 2019, and at this point I have watched this film more times than any other film that came out in the last year. I'm kind of obsessed with it. It's about a group of French dancers who are celebrating the success of their completed dance number when something goes horribly wrong. It has some of the most impressive cinematography I've ever seen. Gaspar Noé and his cinematographer Benoit Debie have done it again. The way that they chose to shoot this thing makes it one of the most horrifyingly immersive film experiences I have ever had. Obviously, being that this is a Gaspar Noé film, it is incredibly upsetting and messed up, and I just love it so much. Number 2, Uncut Gems. The Safdie brothers are quickly becoming some of my favorite filmmakers. If you've seen the outrage over the Oscars completely snubbing every aspect of this film, I promise it's not for nothing. The way that the Safdie brothers pace their films is just a whole other thing. I don't think I took a breath for the entire runtime of Uncut Gems. I saw this film on Christmas Day and have not stopped thinking about it since. Something the Safdie brothers are really good at is presenting a main character who is such an irredeemable scumbag and somehow make you thoroughly invested in what happens to them. Which is really hard to do because you definitely run the risk of the audience being like, I don't like this person, why would I watch this? But the story and presentation are so incredibly engaging, and each character feels so fleshed out that you just end up completely invested in what's going to happen to this person. Adam Sandler's performance as Howard genuinely blew me away. I have never seen him play a character like this, but he kind of disappears into it like he's been playing two-timing jewelers with crippling gambling addictions for years. Beyond impressed with every aspect of this film, and I cannot praise it enough. And my number 1 film of the year is a tie between The Lighthouse and Parasite. They're both masterpieces in my eyes, and I could not choose between them. They could not be more different, but I love them both equally. Directed by 2 beautiful boys, starring even more beautiful boys. Boy oh boy. Thank you for watching. Oh, and by the way, if you guys want to be notified when I upload a video, make sure to subscribe and then click the little bell icon next to the subscribe button. Okay, I'm done now. Thank you, bye.